All right, excuse the lateness. We were in a closed session before this, so I'll call this meeting to order. Aaron, can we get a roll call, or Dan?
Councilmember Bain.
Here.
Councilmember Husnick.
Here.
Councilmember Eigner.
Here.
Councilmember Freer. And Mayor Winnick.
Here. I ask everybody to stand for a pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Look for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. And now, can we get the open forum sign-up sheet? Eric Langness.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I want to speak in regards to item number 7B, the Menard site plan approval, primarily as my position as a planning commission member on the city's planning commission. The recent city council meeting, our staff failed to point out concerns discussed at the planning commission that led to our original motion to start conversations between Menards and the county. Some of the things that they skipped in the discussions at the city council level, and I didn't see them noted anywhere in your packets or information. I know that a couple of you I spoke to on this, but two others here tonight I did not, are the gate canopy location. When you go into the secured area, causes backup into the parking lanes. It could be moved west, so when you're driving in, push it back further into the secured area. That would allow stacking to be up on the side of the building, similar to what they have at their Stillwater store, if anyone's familiar with that location. In fact, most Menards stores that have a similar design layout have a long path along the side of the building to allow stacking of cars. It's a completely reasonable thing for us to do here as well. The tie down and flag area is in that exact same spot in that stacking of parking, except it goes the other way. So you have this primary area where most traffic is trying to go in and out of there, and we're having stacking of trucks and cars in both directions. To me, that's a major safety concern. The triangular area, I refer to it in the Planning Commission as a triangular area, but better described as the entrance when you drive in. It splits off into two, and it's a dysfunctional intersection at best. It's dangerous. There is some signage there, but it's very poor if you're coming in from certain ways through that parking lot. And the outdoor storage in the parking lot is not labeled. In addition, their own plans show streets on the plans that aren't in the locations those streets are, Everton towards Cub. I know another planning commission member brought it up. These were some of my primary concerns that led to, let's have a wider discussion of what we need to do here, that originated maybe at an intersection with Broadway, and started that conversation with the county initially. Menards begrudgingly held that conversation with our city engineer and the county. And it sounds to me like the county is as open as the county would ever be to adding an access point. I think that's relatively unheard of. And I think it's a good idea. It solves all of these other issues because it would push the traffic on the other side of their parking lot. It would split it up. It would also improve safety for our fire department if we were ever to need that Seemingly, we need to have 2 entrances to go around the building, but we only need 1 to go into the parking lot. That seems like a bigger safety issue to me, getting in and out of that place, than it is getting around it. Staff has also labeled this as a warehouse expansion. The new building on the back side of Menards, or the west side of Menards, is far from a warehouse in the common sense. It's a drive-through retail environment with 2 separate lanes through it. It's where you and I will go buy our lumber or whatever we need to go pick up in there. This isn't a warehouse where they're going to store stuff and then put it in the store later. There's also a new enclosed heated special order area that's been expanded on the back side of the building. And the entire side on the north side of the building, where there are flowers, and I think they have some blocks and some other things back there, and that entire area is going to be enclosed for retail space. And so when Mr. Edwards here from Menards says that this isn't going to expand the use of their property, this is not going to drive more customers or more sales, he's flat out lying to you. And for our city staff to present it like this isn't going to cause more people to go into that parking lot, they're flat out lying to you. And it's frustrating to me, and I waited to come up to the city council for this because the original planning commission meeting that we had on this topic, where we motioned to push it out 30 days, there was conversation. Should we have it 30 days? Should we have it 60 days? Staff gave us the impression 30 days was enough to have that conversation. That same staff member didn't mention that he was going on 3 weeks of vacation for those 30 days and handed it over to the city engineer. That was problem number 1 for me. The second was the second planning commission meeting, although it was legally posted on the website, and I found it on there because I'm rather frequently visiting our city website for all the meetings because I follow on far more things than just the planning commission. I was able to find it, and I happened to be coming to a meeting 2 days prior and asked our city engineer, what's going on with Menards? Because there was no additional information in that second packet. And I asked, what did the county do? And he graciously sent that to me in an email, which was later presented to everybody during the meeting. So the meeting was never sent out to the planning commission, so we met our quorum by 1 vote that night. If I had walked out of the room, we couldn't have held the meeting. The Menards plan passed by 1 vote. If I had walked out before we voted, it wouldn't have passed. I bring this to your attention because several of the members that voted to support it, and I respect all of the members in the Planning Commission, and in most aspects it functions very, very well. However, on this particular plan, it did not. Several of the voting members that supported it mentioned during the meeting that they hadn't even read the packet. They weren't even sure if there was a meeting before. And I'm not going to call out my colleagues on that because I wouldn't point blame to them on this instance. We regularly have always gotten emails prior to our meetings with the packet or a link to them. Mr. Edwards has stated in both the Planning Commission meetings and in your most recent meeting that he feels like the city has held him hostage. And I let it go at the Planning Commission meeting. I'm not letting that go anymore. He said it twice. He said it in your meeting and he said it in mine. I don't want to hold Menards or any other business in town hostage. It's about safety. It's about having good functioning construction and plans. It's about addressing issues that Menards has not addressed the entire 20-some years they've been in town here. They've been here longer than I have. I moved here shortly before I turned 21. And I have regularly visited Menards, probably on a weekly basis, ever since. I like the store. This isn't personal. But their parking lot has been dysfunctional since the day I moved here, and this will compound the issues that are at Menards.
Eric, if I can get you to wrap her up, please.
I'm almost done. Another point I want to make, and I don't know that I have an opinion which way you should go with this, but Mayor Winnick, you abstained at the
Correct.
last vote, and Sam Huesnick, you did not. And I respect both of those, and I can make arguments to support both of your decisions for that. But I think both of your businesses are competitors of Menards to some degree, or a fair degree. I think either both of you should vote, or neither of you should vote. I would ask that you ask the attorney for an opinion on whether you should or should not, and maybe go with that. Not long ago, or several years ago, a 72-year-old woman by the name of Virginia Rawlewski, I may be mispronouncing her name, was killed by a pickup truck in a Menards parking lot. And the family of her sued Menards. And Menards fought that all the way to the Michigan Supreme Court, who just in the last couple of months ruled against Menards and said, yep, we're going to send it back to the lower courts and let this go to a jury trial. Menards in that case moved for what's called a summary disposition, arguing that the danger posed by cars in a parking lot is open and obvious. The dangers in their parking lot in Forest Lake are open and obvious. There is no reason we can't fix these with this plan. And tonight, or when you decide on this issue, we really have three choices. We can not approve it, and we continue the same problems we have today. We can approve it as they want it, with none of these issues. There's not one single issue in the parking lot addressed or the entrance exit, and it'll exaggerate those issues significantly. Or we can work with Menards on a solution, and that's not holding them hostage. That's a decision that our community is going to have to live with for about the next 40 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Matt Aronson?
Mayor, members of the council, thanks for letting me speak tonight. Matt Aronson, 15th Avenue Southeast. It's unfortunate Mr. Freer is not here tonight. I want to talk about what's been addressed as far as where he lives and if he has any stake in the game in Forest Lake anymore. Minnesota State Statute 200.031, determination of residence for an elected official. Residents shall be determined in accordance with the following principles, so far as they may be applicable to the facts of this case. Subdivision 6, there's a whole bunch, but this is one that applies. Except as otherwise provided in this section, an individual's residence is located in the precinct where the individual's family lives. On August 28th, council meeting, Mr. Freer's address was brought up. He would not give his actual address, but stated that he lived in the city. After the meeting, Ryan Howard from the Forest Lake Times met with Freer to verify his address. The Times confirmed that Freer's address was not Granada or Birch, the two addresses he used in the 2010 and 2014 elections. Freer did not want to share his address due to concerns for his family's safety, which I completely understand. There's two things you do when someone threatens your family. Number one, which I don't recommend to anyone, is you take care of it yourself. Number two, you report it to the police if it's that concerning or alarming to you. Mr. Freer did not do either one of those. Therefore, his reasons for not giving his address doesn't hold much weight, in my opinion. See, the real reason that Freer doesn't want to show his address is because he doesn't live in Forest Lake. If the Times would have done a simple follow-up, they would have figured that out. Through a private investigation of our own, we know for a fact that Freer lives on Eagle Lake Boulevard in Maple Grove with the rest of his family, as stated in subdivision 6 of the state statute. He's a family man, so I'm not going to spare the house numbers. He has a wife and kids, unless, of course, the council wants to hear it. But Freer will argue that he lives in Forest Lake, and if he shows his driver's license, if he was here and he showed his driver's license would say 91 4th Avenue Southwest in Forest Lake. According to the Washington County property tax, that house is owned by Steve Stegner, who is very good friends with the mayor, business owner. He owns Rapid Press in town, many other properties in the city, and was a previous mayor. Why wouldn't Stegner want Freer to use his address to further their agenda, whatever it is? But the problem is the house is empty. 91 4th Avenue is, you can see here that there's 2x4s, wires hanging. There's no furniture. There's barely any walls, no flooring. My point here is that Mr. Freer lied to the citizens of Forest Lake. Mayor, you can tell us you didn't know a thing about it. We'll decide on our own. He thought that the citizens of Forest Lake were too stupid to find out. And this is one more step taken by the mayor and Mr. Freer to further whatever agenda it is that you have for the city. Mr. Freer does not have a horse in the race here anymore. There's no stake in the game. You guys are liars and you're dirty politicians. Forest Lake citizens want better from their council, and we want better for our city. Thank you.
It's sad. He's on? Okay. It's sad that you chose a night where Mike wasn't here to defend himself. I will stand up for myself. I'm not a dirty politician, and believe what you want. You know, you can sit up here and call me names if you want, but you know, that's not appropriate time for this. And we will look into.
How is it not appropriate?
Not an appropriate time.
Well, we got, you know, codes of conduct and, you know, name calling, other things. I mean, it's time for some of that stuff to end, but
Go check
anyway,
his license.
Pat Solovich,
Check his license.
next, please.
He's the liar.
Pat Solovich.
We're with the American Legion. He's new to this, so he put his name
I
down
put my
there, but
name
we're
on
on the
here, yeah.
agenda.
Oh, okay.
On here later.
So if you want us to speak now, we will, or we'll wait.
No, that's fine, you can wait.
Okay.
So, Jen Mordones, welcome.
Hi, Mr. Mayor, City Council, thank you for this opportunity to speak to you a third time about this issue. I'm here today to talk about the speed on North Shore Trail. Just as a reminder, I live between 233rd and Hayward. I have one of the properties that has property on both sides of North Shore Trail. Actually, there's supposedly an easement, and so my property goes all the way to the lake. I have 2 children, a dog. I'm fairly new to Forest Lake. I moved here from St. Paul 2 years ago. I plan on staying until retirement, so I'll be around for a while. So I'm here to support the reduction of the speed limit on North Shore Trail. However, my ask is that you extend it to Hayward, 30 miles an hour all the way to Hayward. Where we live, it's just very dangerous. So, originally, your staff made a recommendation to reduce the speed limit from, I think it was Greenway, all the way down to Juniper at 30 miles an hour. Your staff listened to citizen complaints, they researched the regulations and the solutions, and they made a thoughtful recommendation, and I think you should follow that recommendation. I also heard the chief of police agree that the speed limit should be reduced to 30 miles an hour. There was a speed study, and it showed that there's heavy traffic in front of my house. 2,300 cars drove past my house in 10 hours. That's going one direction, that's not both directions, so approximately 5,000 cars in 10 hours. And over 900 of those cars driving one direction were driving faster than 40 miles an hour, or speeding, disrespecting the law. So probably double that for both directions. That's 2,000 cars driving past my house greater than 40 miles an hour. The city has the ability to look at unique situations like people who own property on both sides of the road and the dangerous curve at Hayward, which I've talked to all my neighbors, and there's been tons of crashes and people going off the road in that area because people speed around that corner. You know, when I moved in, there was only 3 children on our block. Now, that was 2 years ago, now there are 14 children. Every property that sells on my block is replaced with a young family with children. So we have a lot of kids in that area now. There's been many citizen complaints about this all up and down North Shore Trail. Even the residents who live on Highway 61 are afforded a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. Why can't we be afforded a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit? My experience, I have 17 years experience in local and state government. 15 years of those was with the city of Minneapolis, obviously a much bigger city. My job was to respond to citizen complaints, come up with staff recommendations to city council, and I can tell you that over and over, when the city council minimized or watered down the staff recommendations, the complaints still came in, the problem didn't go away, and in some instances, it was a very, very dangerous situation and things that they found out later. And I would go on about it, but I don't think you want to hear all the examples now. So my hope is that you will follow the staff and the chief of police's recommendation to reduce the speed limit. The stakeholders in this are the people who live on North Shore Trail. People can complain on Facebook all they want. Everybody who's against this, they don't live on North Shore Trail, and if they did, they would be for this. Everybody that I've spoken to who lives on North Shore Trail is for this. The people who oppose this don't respect the speed limit, they don't respect the residents, and they don't respect the pedestrians on the road. Where I came from in St. Paul, cars respected pedestrians, not in Forest Lake. They usually speed up when they see us and rev their engines. So, this is a public safety issue for the people who live on North Shore Trail. It's a livability issue for us, and we have the most at stake. The people who are driving down North Shore Trail, they may lose 1 or 2 minutes of their time on a commute. I could potentially lose my beloved golden retriever, my quality of life, which I have, and lose a child. Those are all very huge things. And I have to drive down North Shore Trail too. I'm gonna lose some time, but I'm willing to give it up because I know that everybody along that road deserves to be safe. So my request is to follow the original staff proposal of reducing the speed limit to 30 miles an hour all the way to Juniper. If you cannot do that, please do it to Hayward. Please do something to reduce the traffic and the danger in that area. Improve public safety, improve the quality of life for the North Shore residents. You guys have the power to do it, and I'm putting my heart out there. Please, please vote to reduce the speed limit to 30 for me and my family and everybody else on that road. Thank you.
Thank you. Diane Smith?
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for letting me come up here and address my concerns. Mayor Winnick, I had spoken to you on the phone a week ago. So for the rest of you, it was about September 12th. I was made aware that Connexus Energy is going to be installing smart meters on all the homes in Forest Lake and even surrounding communities. For those of you who are not aware of what smart meters are, they are otherwise known as AMI meters, or advanced metering infrastructure. It's simply a breakthrough in technology where it takes out the meter reader. They don't have to come to your home and record the number that's on the meter. Those currently are called analog meters. The smart meter is a type of a Wi-Fi, and it uses RF or EMF waves to allow this technology to take place. Some meters have the ability where a meter reader can come by and just click a button, like they call them CellNet readers. They still have to drive by, but they just, with a click of a button, instead of getting out of their van, they can just get the information right there in the palm of their hand. But these AMI are even more advanced, and they're being placed on homes. A lot of people are not aware of what they are or what they're capable of. I do a lot of research, and in my research findings is that they can and have caused health issues for people. I right away called the people who were in charge of this and spearheading this, and I got a hold of Don Hall, who was our representative for Forest Lake, and he graciously talked to me about it and gave me a name of Jeff Hendrickson, who is operations manager for Connexus Energy. I've been in contact with Jeff, very nice fellow. We had a good talk on the phone, and he told me he was not aware, or nor would he ever give the okay or thumbs up for something that is known to have health effects of this nature. And I said, I will gladly send you some PubMed articles. And he said he would gladly read them. I have 7. I mean, there's plenty more than just 7. But I copied off 7 PubMed articles, abstracts that talk about their conclusions that, yes, there are health effects. Everything from nervous systems in children, anxiety-like behaviors found in rats in their studies, kidney and liver cell changes, and it just goes on and on and on. So what I am asking today is that we can use the city council chambers as a forum just to inform people, the good people of Forest Lake, so they know what is being offered to them. As far as the smart meter, I asked Jeff Hendrickson if he would be willing to come to a meeting, and he said he would. He has not been invited, but that he would come if he was invited. He gave me his phone number. I have his email. I would come as well, just to talk about what I know on my end. I am not an expert, but I'm just a mom who researches these types of things. So this is what I am asking, and hoping that we can get him in here so that the people know. And one more thing, he did say there is an opt-out. If you want to keep your analog meter on your house, he said that's fine, but it would be a $25 per month fee for people like me who don't want Wi-Fi continually running. By the way, the AMI readers, or these smart meters, they run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week of continuous RF waves in your house. It is a low emitting frequency, but in my house, I don't have Wi-Fi. Yes, I have a cell phone, but I can control that. I turn it on and I turn it off. With the smart meter on your home, you cannot turn that off. So with that bombardment, I'm not for it. I do not want it changed on my house, and I do not want to pay a $25 a month fee. I did talk to Mr. Hendrickson about options. If people want to opt out, that there are ways we can get around that $25 fee where people could maybe write in the number of what is stated on the meter every month that they have a bill. I mean, if we're licking stamps today and we're sending them in the mail, we can certainly write down the numbers that are on our meters. And if there's a discrepancy, well, then maybe they can slap a fine on the person who lied. But so anyway, I'm happy to talk about alternatives to this opt-out ability. So if we can invite Jeff Hendrickson, I do have his number. I don't know who to give that to, though.
We'll probably just give it to the gentleman on the end over there.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for letting me speak.
Aaron Meyer?
Hello. I've been here, this is my third time now. I came right after moving in a little over a year ago. I live right next door to Jen. We're on 233rd Street, but we actually face the lake as well, split lot. Just kind of, I've given you all my reasons. My son's there, I've got 2 dogs, all that stuff. There's more kids that just moved in right down the street, all that great stuff. But just expressing my disappointment to see that it's gonna be 35 miles an hour rather than 30 miles an hour, which was planned or spoken of at least. I feel like it should be 30 miles an hour. I would selfishly say and agree with Jen to go all the way to Hayward, just past our house. But realistically, I think you should go well past Aqua. I don't know what the street names are there, but there's split lots all the way down, and there's people flying down there. It's hard to pull out of Aqua at times. I frequent the restaurant all the time. And lastly, do you guys have a plan to enforce this new speed limit? Because you can post any speed limit you want. You can post 25, you can post 55, they're still gonna go 10 to 15 over it. So, short and sweet statement for you guys. But I would like to thank you for actually addressing it one way or another. Thanks.
Thank you. And Eugene Hurstel.
Eugene Hurstel, 10234 204th Street North. Mr. Mayor, City Council, thank you for allowing us to have this open forum, because at one time we weren't allowed. I would just like to say, I thought maybe we could be pretty objective in some of our dealings with information and some of our issues and stuff, and have a discussion and pretty much have a discord between people, and not more of the, well, opinions or kind of making some real gross statements that I would consider. I would hope that I would respect. I do not agree with all issues with some of you and with even some of the other people on the council, but I hope that I would never, I'll get you. If you don't listen to me, if you don't do it my way, I'm going to do it this way. I'll come in. It seems to me that on Facebook and stuff, we're putting out some information that sometimes pushes people's buttons. And people aren't stupid in Forest Lake, but they are led astray. We need to have an objective talk about things. We don't need what's going on in the country, I don't think, in some areas where I think if I have a certain attitude, I can make you feel bad and really get you upset and come after you. And that's what's happening in our country. And it's happening in Forest Lake. It wasn't this way before. Now, we can play the blame game, we can do all that stuff, but I don't think we ought to be doing that. I think we ought to have an objective to put information out there, which we're putting out there, seeing if it sticks. Throw the mud on the wall and see if it sticks. And there's a number of things that have gone on that have been refuted already. And it's got a lot of people on edge, and a lot of people say, oh yeah, here it is. And they don't want to think for themselves, but they're thinking through the pushing of certain people pushing buttons. And you need to be careful of what is being put out there. We want the truth out there. We want to be able to come here. There is no dirty politician on this council. None of you aren't dirty politicians. Some of you may have a wrong idea, or maybe be on one side of an issue that maybe doesn't seem quite right or whatever. But I think that we need to show respect, whatever. And I'll be the first one to say there was times way back, or I didn't. But I'm seeing a different deal going on here now, and I don't want to stoop to that level. My wife wrote an article in the paper, wrote a letter to the paper, and told about some of the behavior that's gone on here. And we don't need to do that. We can be adults unless we want to be kids back like we were. I taught school. We used to call it the junior high mentality and some of the stuff that was going on. And there's no reason, there's no rhyme to anything. And they'll come up with all kinds of goofy stuff. I think what we want is real answers, and we need to stop at putting some information out there. Some of this stuff, like I said, has been rejected by the Forest Lake Times, and some of the other stuff also, we know it should be put aside. We need people to find out for themselves. Sometimes you have to research and you have to go and find out yourself instead of believing somebody else's. Because there's a lot of stuff out there. Even the issues that I'm for, if somebody comes up and says, oh, this is the way it is, I like to look into it sometimes and say, okay, I didn't just fall off the turnip truck, that I need to check out and see what the situation is. And I hope that we can come together a little bit and solve some of the issues that are coming to Forest Lake. And that we need to be objective, we need to at least show respect to each other and have that discussion. And I would thank you, and I guess that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, that ends the open forum for tonight. I will look for a approval of the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I'd make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented, A through G, 6A through G.
All right, do we have a second on that?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Carries. Brings us to item 7A. American Legion, come on up.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we can stay at our 3 minutes, or we'll try. My name's Pat Silovich. I'm on the E-Board at the Forest Lake American Legion, Post 225. For the record, it's misspelled on here. It's S as in Sam, I-L-O, V as in Victor, I-C-H. We came for 2 reasons tonight. The first one is to say thank you to the City Council, and the second is to announce dates for 2018. On the first item, to say thanks, the city kicked in $10,000 this year to help defray part of the cost of the fireworks display, which is significant, around 20 grand a year. And as you know, the Forest Lake American Legion is the main driver for a pretty marvelous regional Forest Lake 4th of July celebration. It's gone that way for years. We continue to do a good job and plan on doing continued good work for years to come. The fundraising part to pull off this 4th of July celebration goes on year-round. The fundraising event for 2018 basically started maybe 2 weekends after this year's 4th of July was over. We do the monthly post-breakfast booyahs, spaghetti feeds. We're netting $1,000 here, $1,400 there. The vast majority of it is being pumped right back into our 4th of July fund. So again, we're here to say thank you for your contribution to help us continue this effort. We hope, sincerely hope, that we can be a part of next year's budget to keep this going on yearly with the success that we have had in years past.
I'm Vicki Petrie. I'm the finance officer with the American Legion. I have been on the parade committee, I think, since 2007, working tireless hours and whatnot. I also keep track of all the funding that comes in. Just so you're aware, all the funding for the 4th of July parade and fireworks is in a separate fund at Franzen. Has nothing to do with the American Legion's business. I just want to make that clear. And like Pat said, the fireworks, we are on a contract with the fireworks company. It is 20 grand a year, so we have them for the next 2 more years. We do have a committee that does work on that, and most of them are Legion members. They had to be certified to go out on the boats and light off those fireworks. One of them is Ashley Venberg. She's a 28-year-old veteran of ours, and she's the one that lights off the fireworks, so. We are also planning on next year, and I wanted to bring up that the 4th of July is on a Wednesday next year. So what we're looking at is starting the festivities Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. The last time we had a Wednesday 4th of July was in 2012, because we have to set up the carnival, and they're gonna probably shut down the street on Wednesday, set it up Thursday, and open on Friday. So they would be open,
3rd Street.
yeah, 3rd Street, yeah, between Cherry Point and the Legion. So they would be open Friday till midnight, Saturday to midnight, Sunday till 10, Monday till 10, Tuesday till midnight, and then right after the fireworks. So they usually shut down, 10:30, quarter to 11. They shut down on 4th of July night because it's a work day the next business day. So we are here to ask to be endorsed to be able to have those dates for 4th of July and see if there are any concerns with that length of time.
Are we losing access to Cherrywood Point at all with closing that street?
No, I work with Greg over there, and I get his approval, and when I submit all the permits for the shutting down of the parade and that street, I submit them to Dan and to Jolene, and there's an email from Greg giving approval to shut it down.
Sure.
So we just shut down from 3rd Street,
From Broadway,
Broadway to their very first road.
and you come in
So,
from the.
They don't
from the
lose any
north.
access in there, so they're able to get in and out, and that fire lane on the other side,
Sounds real good.
yeah.
So the last time this happened was 2012. Is that the last time that was on this date cycle?
Yes.
And you followed the same plan in 2012 of doing a Wednesday,
Yep.
a Friday through Wednesday event?
Yep.
I guess my question would be to Chief Peterson on concerns of length of staffing, or I guess between Chief Peterson and Dave Adams, between, city support and thoughts on how that worked in 2012, and one more maybe point of correction, it's the longest period, right? Because if it were
Yes.
on a Thursday,
It is the
you
We
would
would
have,
do-
you would do a 4-day event.
Yeah.
So this is the longest period. So I
Yeah.
guess thoughts on ability to support that, or concerns of the city kind of
It's the
heading down
longest
that
for
path?
us too, because we're the ones that,
Right, correct.
it's less than ideal when it hits on a Wednesday.
Yeah, it's, in the past, it hasn't been a problem. It is a long stretch, no doubt about it, but no problems or concerns from the police department. You do need to remember that in 2012, I believe, Cherrywood Point was not there, so it was a little bit different. But I do know the American Legion works with Cherrywood Point, and they really seem like they have a great relationship and allowing access and closing down that street. And haven't had any major concerns at all.
Any concerns from a Public Works perspective, putting you completely on the spot?
No, I would echo Rick. It's
Okay.
an extended period, but not anything we can handle.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, I want to thank you guys. You put in an awful lot of effort for the 4th of July. It's always a great event to have in town. Look forward to inviting you to the EDA so we can sit down and talk about, a little more city participation.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Maybe freshening up some of the events, different things like that.
Absolutely.
But, I support the dates, and I think it'll be fine, but definitely would like to, get more city involvement and actually more community involvement with the 4th of July, and make it a bigger event, make it much bigger, adding some new things, different things like that aren't going to burden you guys.
Right.
But help promote the entire city anyway, so.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can sit down and talk about that fairly soon. Go ahead, Ed.
The only suggestion I might have is that maybe we could have like an open house for citizen participation and get some community input as to what ideas they might have for the 4th, because I know it's a big burden on you guys. And I, as a citizen, appreciate all the things you guys have to go through and do, and also as a council member for taking the burden off us, but
Yeah, we're definitely open to, the community, and I can see some of the community members here that I know help all the time, that aren't necessarily even members of the VFW or the Legion, so. One more thing I wanted to bring up was, I did, we have the same carnival, we've had Mago Carnival for 7 years. I did go outside and look at any carnivals, because I had heard some concerns with some things that might or might not have happened. But I did go outside and look at the carnivals that are licensed, bonded, and insured to be here in Minnesota. There's 5 of them, and I did go down and check out one of them, and that's an absolute no, just from my perspective. But these carnivals, the one in Anoka is absolutely not. We are grandfathered in and we're not leaving. So it's 5 years out if you even think you want to get a new carnival. So I just wanted to put that out there. And also our fireworks is for 3 years. So when we do have this meeting, looking at those options, absolutely getting other people involved rather than us members of the Legion going out tirelessly and finding these venues would be great to have the community involved.
Well, and I think, space is really becoming a premium. And, we got the Hardwood Creek Trail area.
Yeah.
That would be really great for maybe relocating the carnival or, there's other options. That's just the first one that popped up into my head last year. And, Ryan's had some good ideas, those in 5Ks, some other things. But, is the quality of the carnival is part of it, and just, maybe more equipment. I know they can't really fit their whole carnival in Forest Lake here, and so we end up with, what fits.
Right.
But I think that really, the limited size of the carnival also limits people's enthusiasm to go there again. So, we need to have a conversation with the EDA and sit down at a workshop or something fairly soon. And
The Old Timers baseball game was held this year for the second, that's a relatively new event, only the second time held this year. Big success, and that came out of that same school of thought. What else can we throw in here? Generate some new ideas, so open forum could accomplish the same thing.
Sure.
Let's do it.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to tell you guys thank you for all you do for the city of Forest Lake and what you do for the veterans. It's absolutely amazing. All the volunteers you guys have over there, it's just incredible. I would think that pretty soon they're going to get tired and some are going to, maybe you're having that trouble now, but so just heartfelt thanks to both of you and the Legion.
Yep, thanks, Sam. I'll reiterate
Thank you,
that
Sam.
when I go back.
You bet.
All right.
Thank you, and thank you for your time. We went over our 3 minutes.
do we need a motion for those days or anything here, or just?
Your Honor, traditionally you have approved, just because there is a relationship where they use certain city, rights of way and facilities for the event, and you traditionally have approved the dates to allow for that exclusivity.
All right.
I'd make a motion that we approve the dates that they're requesting.
I'll second it.
All right. Got a motion, a second. Any further conversation? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, thanks for your time.
All right. Menards. Donovan, you want to take us through that one, please?
Mayor, members of council, I'd like to present the an appeal to a Menard site plan approval. Here I'll show you on the screen the existing aerial photo of the existing site, building and parking.
Push that one to get the blue light on it again.
I had the blue light right there.
I'm sure you're all familiar with it. And so in August, as Mr. Lang just mentioned, in July, the Planning Commission reviewed it. They said they wanted more discussion around access on Broadway. This would be related to anything along here. And then so discussions were had with the county, and what the Menards would like to do is to build this warehouse and shipping area and close these other areas from basically 3-season to 4-season. What was approved with the site plan was an improvement for fire department access, where Menards agreed to put a 12-foot wide gate here and remove 3 parking spots. And that was something to allow for better access on this north side, to have two ways to reach the new warehouse. What came out of the discussions initially with Washington County was this concept plan, which would eliminate that area for the fire department access, for one thing. And so as the appeal was heard at the first August council meeting, council also asked for further discussion, further explore access, ways to improve how to get into and out of this site. The conversation did occur last Friday afternoon, and again, Washington County, after saying they like Menards, they want to support the business, they do feel like this 4-lane concept plan would be what they would require for access onto Broadway. So they basically repeated their stance. They again said they could do a cooperative agreement to participate in the cost of this. Also, at that same, in the same conversation, Menards, represented by Mr. Tyler Edwards here, did say that it was acceptable for them to remove some of the sales area, and they also, what new information came out of this discussion was that at the on this southern entrance, when Everton is reconstructed by the county, essentially 2022 or 2023, that this county would be constructing a median here. And this median would likely extend south of the current access, and that in that case, during the design phase, Menards would have to participate with the county on extending this access southward, which is essentially one of the big problems. Cars coming in, taking rights, people leaving the site don't know if they're taking a right to come in or going straight. So perhaps what the future design could be would be that the access might be extended all the way down to here to line up with the current access to the Keys Cafe, Jimmy John's shopping center there. And then, and so that's obviously not an immediate change, but it seemed at this point that both Washington County and Menards are on the same page where they'd like to see that change. So that wasn't, so that was the result of that discussion. So I guess the question for the council this evening is, is this the design of the concept plan, part of this approval, which would make it, I believe, a large burden for the applicant. But I'd like to engage in discussion. If you see other issues we'd like to address, but that's the main thing, is whether access would be required and does it meet that necessary nexus, meaning does it need to be necessary to take away the impact of this or mitigate the impact of that warehouse expansion. I'm happy to take any questions from City Council.
Well, thank you, Donovan. Any questions? Well,
No. I'd like to hear from the applicant, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Tyler Edwards from Menards, back again. We did have a conversation with the county on Friday afternoon, and it was interesting for a couple different reasons. One of them was, I guess they really like Menards. No, they mentioned that a few different times. I think the basis of what came out of that conversation was access is an issue that they would like to address, talk about, work on because of their reconstruction of Everton. But I think, at least what I understood, and I guess Ryan and Donovan can chime in whenever they want, that they don't quite know what's going to happen yet. We don't know what's happening on Everton. No study's been done. No consultant has been hired. And I think the way we left it with them is we obviously want to keep an open relationship with them, but maybe paraphrasing here, but they said the way Menards access today, it's Menards access. We don't have a problem with it. Let's look at it in the future. Was kind of how I interpreted the end of the phone call there. I did ask explicitly one more time for all of us, is some sort of limited access on a Broadway allowed? They said no. Again, just so we had that very clearly stated. So I guess what I'm asking you tonight is separate the two issues. One issue being the proposed expansion that we're working on, not only at the store, but at every other store, to make sure that they have the same warehouse space at every store, ensure our ability to operate long in the future. And then, I mean, essentially we'd be digging our own grave if we didn't work with the county on their reconstruction of Everton anyway. So we are obviously very interested in doing that with them. We just don't have all the facts yet. So agreeing to something now is very premature. If they close off any sort of access, obviously we have a very vested interest in that. So I'm just asking you to approve a warehouse expansion, and over the next couple of years, I'm going to be working with the county and the city engineer and see what happens as their plans develop and their consultants are hired and their studies are done, and grow with their project.
All right, thank you. I guess before we begin the discussion, it was brought up that, last time I didn't vote due to, I felt there might be a potential conflict of interest. And Sam, you did.
Yep.
Jay, unless you have any real harsh feelings on this, I will vote tonight, because if both of us don't vote, this ain't gonna get done. So I will be voting as well on it.
Okay.
And thank you for coming. There were a lot of concerns expressed by Commissioner Langness. And, I do believe they're legitimate concerns, but I don't believe they're concerns that are for the city. I think they're more in Menard's best interest for traffic access and, ability to get customers in and out, especially, looking at Everton Avenue getting redone in potentially the near future, and or changes to access there. I think I get the feeling that, the city of Forest Lake wants to work with you. Unfortunately, I think we're kind of butting heads with Washington County when it's all or nothing and no compromise in there. But I just want to caution Menards on the fact that you have one access and issues have been brought up. Are we liable for anything here as far as their access issues go, Jay?
Well, Mr. Mayor and council members, first of all, with regards to the conflict of interest or appearance of a conflict of interest, to have a conflict, you really need to have a financial stake in this. And whether you own your business or an Ace Hardware store, the financial impact on you is remote, and it's more of an appearance of a conflict of interest as opposed to a true one. So I don't see the real conflict of interest, I don't think your profits are going to go up or down, based on this site plan approval. With regards to the median, the current law in Minnesota is they can put a median in front of their access right now, and the county will take the stance that they have that police power to do that. So I don't know, is Everton our road or is it a county road?
County road. So
Ryan, that's the clarification question. So realistically, outside of losing some functionality of that intersection, there would be nothing in a couple of years to compel Menards to make an adjustment to their access. I mean, especially given the kind of wetland mitigation it would appear as if they would be having to do. But if the county, when they reconstruct Everton, decided to extend the median and prevented the left out of the property. And so at that point, they'd have to make a business decision to live with, the fact that they would no longer have the left out, or make that adjustment to their access. There's nothing that would compel it otherwise.
Yeah, and just to expand on that, the county stood firm on what they would vision as an intersection access at the signalized area, but they were also willing to pay for the improvements within the county right-of-way. So that's still going to be an option on the platform when this project does move into project development, and the applicant's aware of that too. The applicant was also aware that they should anticipate a median being extended down to Everton, part of that Everton project, because just the intersection spacing guidelines that the county has in these two types of road categories, it came out to like 660 feet that they wouldn't want access. So the applicant knew that, heard that, and acknowledged that, and that's where they would either work on relocating their driveway further south to line up with the existing interchange, or they would pursue another access at the signalized interchange. Now, you know, obviously permitting through a wetland, it's going to be a very difficult task, especially when you do have another option on the table here. And at the end of the day, it might be cheaper to build at the signal, but that's going to be the applicant's decision in the future when they both have stated they're willing to work together as that project's developed and the consultants are brought on board, because ultimately the county's going to leading that design work anyways.
Mr. Mayor and council members, I just wanted to also, you have city staff telling you here that traffic is not going to increase that much. There's not that much of a logical nexus between the site plan approval they're asking for and requiring I don't know, $250,000 or I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars this new intersection is. So I guess I'd be a little bit concerned if you required them to build that.
So maybe just adding in another comment that hasn't been made. I appreciate the concerns that have been brought up throughout this process, but when we're looking for council to overturn a planning commission decision, I'm looking for some overwhelming, compelling reason, and I'm not getting to that point. I've seen some concerns, but I think there's also mitigating concerns or mitigating factors, and in this case, there are other options on the table, and yes, Menards is going to have some business decisions they need to make around keeping an Everton access, or would you move an access over to off of Broadway in a full signal. But I think I'm in a position of that's your decision to make, and, you know, managing the wetland and the adjacent property and all of those things. Again, I'm not at a spot where it's up to the city to make that decision right now. So for that reason, I'll be supporting denying the appeal.
I agree with Councilperson Baines, and I don't see the difference here with this parking lot versus our parking lot right out here, which we just approved for the new buildings. You have one entrance in and out. You have the theater and all those businesses. You have Friar Tuck's. Everything flows out of that entrance. We did not require another entrance further down. I realize you can go around almost an alley, but nobody goes that way. The majority of all the cars go out through one entrance. If it's okay right outside on our property, it certainly should be okay for this. So I will be supporting this.
Anything else, Sam?
I would have to agree. I mean, it's, there's some things that can be done in Everton there and with the county and on that street there. There's plenty of things that can be done to fix that.
And I didn't make that point strongly, but there are some concerns, and those things will be addressed. I just see a timeline where that's going to happen in a reasonable future, and there's going to be a lot of options on the table. So no need to deny the planning request that's right now.
Correct. And I think what we see here is just, the city could have been an advocate, pushing to get the county to do something, advocating on a business's behalf, because we all see red flags here, that issues could occur, and we all patronize Menards, and we see the traffic over there. And I want to thank Commissioner Langness for bringing it up. I know it's caused a delay, but there are significant issues in the way this whole system worked. I think more than it's not the addition you're trying to put up, but it's where we see that growth happening. And we've had a lot of traffic issues in Forest Lake over the years, so I think it's something that, and not just us, but a lot of cities have to deal with and trying to look forward. And there's going to be more issues on that, and we want to work with you and be an advocate on your behalf of the county. And that's, I think, where we really fell short. I think that's where city staff could have really gotten a little more creative with Washington County rather than just saying, you know, it's this or nothing. I mean, I don't like that answer from any part of government. I think that's wrong to say, you know, we're going to spend $1 million or you get nothing. I think there's ways to work through that and become affordable, and working with business owners, working with neighborhoods to get a resolution that works well for the people that are there. But yes, I will support, you know, your addition as well. I wish you best of luck, and unfortunately, yeah, I think, you know, there's going to be something having to be done in the near term rather than the long term, but I don't see that as a reason to, you know, the city or the county's lack of desire shouldn't cause you guys inconvenience at this point anyway. Go ahead.
The only thing I'd like to add is Menards didn't grow to what they are because they're not good retailers. They know what they're doing. They know what works best for them, and Commissioner Langus's points are well taken. And I'm sure if those become greater issues for Menards customers, that Menards on its own will address the thing like the parking setback as far as where they come in and out of the building supplies. And if this new addition is going to create more of a congestion there, I'm sure Menards on its own will address it because it's going to impact their customers. So.
All right. And if there's no further discussion?
If you want to see a confusing parking lot, go down to the Texas Roadhouse on, off of Highway 10 and.
You can't get out of that.
No, you can't get in or out of it.
So, Your Honor, just on this, just by way of reminder, so staff in the process of, you know, evaluating this application did recommend approval to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission did approve it as presented with the conditions that were outlined by staff. And what you're acting on this evening is an appeal to that action. And so there, if you are not inclined to support the appeal, which would be overturning the Planning Commission's action, you would need to make a motion to deny the appeal.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to deny the appeal.
I'll second.
Got a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I'll abstain, just
you
in
are,
case,
okay.
just in case. I don't think Ace Hardware is a competition for Menards, though.
Okay.
I really don't.
Probably the other way around.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good luck. Item 7C, North Shore Trail and Heath Avenue speed limits. Hey, can you take us through that one, please?
Mayor, City Council, in your packet tonight, you have a consideration to create by resolution to designate an urban district and a rural district on North Shore Trail and establish a 35-mile-an-hour zone on Heath Avenue. I just kind of recapped how we got to this, what's in your packet tonight. Obviously, you've heard some of the residents speak again tonight. We've, you know, presented at previous meetings as well. There are portions within North Shore Trail that certainly would meet the urban district, small segments within the area, that's the red line. But then the consideration and discussion was brought forth, well, do you want to post a number of different zones out throughout the corridor, or do you want consistency so traffic drivers are aware of, you know, what zones they may be in, they're easier to enforce. This way now you know you have the enforceable zones, and then also you don't flood the right-of-way with additional signage at each of the zones. So if the City Council wants to move forward with establishing the urban district, which is the blue district, that would basically be an extension of the 30-mile-an-hour zone to Heath. And then from Heath all the way to North Shore Trail, you would establish the rural residential district, which would have a 35-mile-an-hour enforceable speed limits. And then also with Heath, would make that connection that has a 35 on the new zone, and then also right across the city border with the dotted line is the Wyoming that has 35-mile-an-hour posted road. So what you got here tonight is an enforceable speed limit and a continuous zone. So if this is something you would want to consider, then you would adopt a resolution, and then Public Works would work on the signage, which would basically require installing 10 new signs, speed limit signs.
Mayor's Council, just for clarification, and Ryan, you know, maybe you can expound on this too, is if you, as a staff, we discussed the consistency of the speed limit in the whole corridor, basically 61 to 97 for the different legs. And what you have here is a speed limit that is enforceable, will stand up when challenged legally, when citations are issued. To the extent that you wanted to vary from this and create a consistent speed that was less than 35 miles an hour in the rural district, you potentially don't have the enforceability from 35 to 30. So does that sound, that's accurate, Ryan?
So if we deviated from what's shown on here, you would then obviously take the chance every time a ticket's issued, if it's goes through and actually is enforced or held up in court, if it's challenged. Other than, just city staff looking at this, we also had MnDOT traffic look at it, because, they get involved in that stuff too. They drove it. I would concur with our findings. Alternately, the other option is to do your speed study. And we did that with the speed cart, and we would be way beyond these speed limits to have an enforceable speed limit, because what you do is take your average daily traffic there, the 85 percentile of that speed, and we were, seeing stuff relatively high. So this is where we're at with the current road conditions. Now, in time, when improvements are made to the road, you can reconsider some of that stuff. You can do traffic calming measures, curb and gutter, narrow things up, stuff like that. Ultimately, though, if this was posted as today, and you wanted results, the council should probably give some direction to the police that we need to enforce this. Otherwise, this really is just words on paper.
So, go ahead, you had it.
So I need to confirm, so there are pockets between Heath and 97 where we would be able to support a 30-mile-an-hour speed, but it's just that there's not an ability to have a consistent support for that zone.
They're short segments, somewhere, I would say somewhere between Aqua and Heath. There's short segments in there, but then you also got the curves.
Yep.
So you got the advisory
Yep.
signs that should be up on the corners. But then when you go east to Aqua, you got some areas that, fall out of that in that density, but then we define that as those are in the sharpest curves, the first two curves, so you shouldn't, and then the distance between, you got the stop, so that's on a continuous speed zone.
So if consistency is I'm sorry to be dense on this, but if our goal is to be consistent so people are able to understand and follow, it would be a 35 is what would be supported throughout the entire corridor.
In red.
Currently in red, correct. Okay, thank you.
Because currently, right now, everything that's in the solid blue and the solid red is 40 miles an hour.
And we need to rely on the density requirements to get to a 35 because the speed study isn't going to get us there.
Both 30 and 35.
Correct.
So that's why we can do the urban or rural. Now, if we didn't qualify for any of those and we're more, outer limits, areas, less density, then we would try the speed study.
And doing something else is going to either sacrifice consistency or the ability to enforce, right?
Course,
Okay,
which would tie up more time.
correct. Okay, thank you.
Couple of questions for you, Ryan. First off, if we change this speed limit now, can we change it again in a month, a year? How, is there a designated time between when we could do it again?
I cannot answer that. Maybe Jay could enlighten me.
Mr. Mayor, council members, I think you can change it quite often whenever you want to. The only problem is that, the speed statutes, the state regulates, and Ryan's trying to tell you how he can work within that kind of statutory time to have it. In a lot of our cities, we have, speed signs that say 20 miles an hour, and you can only enforce 30. And the city still leaves them up, which is kind of a goofy situation where some know and some don't know, but, they're going 35 and a 20, and somebody thinks the people should be going 20, but we only have a limited ability to regulate the speed, but, you can put up goofy signs that can't be enforced, but that doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
I guess my train of thought was, if we do a speed study at 40 miles an hour and it supports going down a certain amount, but if our speed is at 35, would then 6 months from now another study potentially support reducing it even further?
Well, let's just say this is like this for several years, right? And then we go out and do a speed study and we find that 85 percentile comes in at 30. I think you could say that you went through that process, but MnDOT will complete that process.
Okay, so that's out of our control as well.
But, before we've gone into those processes before, we've used the police department to gauge how we're going to score, right? So we don't all of a sudden send MnDOT in and do a speed study and we find out, oops, now it's going up, or something like that. So we've used the police department a number of times on other roadways to gauge where we're at. They're just simply there shooting from a distance so nobody can see them because we don't want to interrupt the results and stuff like that. But I just wouldn't see it likely falling below 35. I mean, I drive this slow knowing the issues at hand, and I'd just like to see what happens when I've driven 30 and 35. I have people all over me, they pass me, So that's where the enforcement's gonna come into place.
They want to eat you up alive.
But I think this is a step in the right direction, and obviously, long-term, we have stuff in our CIP, and hopefully we can address some of the things on a more permanent basis, too.
Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, I'd be interested in Chief Peterson's comments on what's enforceable. He's the one that's tasked with, enforcing this, and putting signs up that won't be enforced doesn't seem to make any sense.
Yeah, I guess that would confuse us as police officers and confuse the community as well. If you have a 40-mile-per-hour zone today and then you put up a 20-mile-per-hour zone, and in us enforcing that, it would be extremely confusing to the community members, but also to us as police officers. And then when you go to the courts, so, I would support, lowering the speed limit and having no problem enforcing it as long as I know that my officers can enforce it and they're backed by the courts. But,
Obviously in favor of 35.
yes.
What about near the area where they have concerns about crossing the road? Is there a specific location we can paint crossings on there to identify that rather than just, having people cross at will? I guess that's their own choice, but, to help alert drivers that, there's a crosswalk area here.
You could establish a signed striped crosswalk. Important thing about that is you will want to make sure you have landings on both sides. Some of those properties along that very narrow to the lake have landscape right at the edge of it. So basically the only way for somebody to walk then parallel with the road is on the shoulder, because otherwise you're walking on a steep embankment already. But I mean, there's some standard signs. I guess you could look into the MUTCD, Minnesota Uniform Traffic Control Devices, that might have just stuff like ped crossing ahead, stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's not like physical improvements that can be made because you've got numerous driveways, and the people are not gonna, walk down 3 blocks and then go over and then back down to they're gonna go straight across, to their property. That's the functional side of it. And so it could be some signage just saying, caution pedestrian, or, pedestrians in area. I mean, there's certain things we can put out there, but generally, physical improvement wise is gonna be difficult because there's so many of those driveways.
And the landscaping on the west side that I was talking about, maybe you could, one of those, we have them in the downtown roundabout in the summertime, those little fluorescent things, set those in the middle of the road.
Well, something's got to be done. I don't think this is the long-term solution for it. And I think, everybody that's here, everybody that's watching, distracted driving is probably as bad, if not worse, than just the speeding alone. And anything we do here isn't going to help a distracted driver. I mean, you know, putting the warning signs, everything else up are great. I think the change in speed is more psychological than actual time. I don't think it's really gonna take people much longer to get to where they're going, but just that 30 mile an hour just, you know, creates the angst in some that, we say you're gonna get run over at certain places too. We need to do something with North Shore completely. I mean, we have to come up with, I mean, it's gonna be very expensive, but it's something that, you know, we have to start creating a plan. We have to do a study. Obviously, everything has to start with a study, unfortunately. But there needs to be a bike path or something to get pedestrians off of the road. And, you know, a lot more needs to be done. Some type of reliever road or something, even if that's going up into Chisago County, might help for part of that too. But, I'm open to whoever wants to make a motion for something here anyway. Or, Ed?
As far as the question of speed limit, all the way to Aqua, it seems like that's pretty densely populated with houses on both sides of the street. Why can't we do 30? I believe the suggestion was made out there to at least Aqua, and then it becomes more rural once you get down that turn, and there aren't as density as housing.
So you think the houses are just back farther, but I think the density is.
Well, as you drive up to Aqua, I mean, you've even got people that have their boat launch on the other side of the road, so they're constantly crossing.
Right.
Kids are crossing. I would think you'd want to keep that at 30, and then once you are past where there's land being used on the, I'll call it the lakeside, then make it 35.
So remember, previously, we did present that showed those short segments that would meet the urban district, 30 mile an hour. But to be continuous, would you want to start stop zones probably 3 or 4 times between Heath and Aqua that we?
No, I'd want it 30 all the way to.
Then it would not be an enforceable speed limit, because it does seem to appear to be dense here, but there is a lot of wetlands adjacent to that roadway, so you do lose the double-sided density. And we went through all those and showed those zones, what they would be, and that's then what triggered the speed carts, and working with MnDOTs, and coming back to something to this point that would be in a continuous enforceable speed limit. You certainly could go put 30 mile an hour signs out there, but to answer Chief Peterson's concerns, what would they be enforcing? Would they enforce? Or would they just let things go? You know, so you get in that confusion, and not only with the enforcement side of it, but the driving side. A continuous speed is going to always be better than a start, stop, speed up, slow down thing through a corridor. And, you know, it seems kind of funny in here, but, you know, if you have continuous traffic and it actually was continuous, pedestrians learn that behavior of those drivers, right? Unfortunately, we don't have continuous traffic on a routine basis through here. And that's where I think the enforcement can help that to make it more continuous to the speed limit that we're posting tonight. So then when they are crossing, you know, that judgment is in line with what they've seen the day before, 2 days before, so they can make the safe crossings. So if people would abide by the speed limits, I think that would improve pedestrian safety, but, you know, like I said, this is writing on paper until we enforce it in all parts of the city.
Go ahead.
So I agree with the mayor that we need a long-term solution. So shoulders, line of sight challenges, pedestrian facilities, we need something that considers all of those things. It's frustrating we have limited short-term options, and so reducing the speed limit seems to be it. I'm frustrated by state law and how speed limits are set. It's unfortunate that we can't, as a municipality, say we want a continuous enforceable 30 mile an hour all the way to Aqua if we think that's what makes sense for our community, but it seems like state statute doesn't allow for that. And so in that situation, I think let's go with what is the most enforceable, common sense, doesn't confuse people, which seems to be the position of council or position of staff at this point, which is 30 miles an hour up until Heath, and then from Heath until 97 going to 35 miles an hour. We have a question in the audience if you're willing to entertain it.
So she's dancing in her seat, I know. The last time, the original proposal never mentioned that this was not enforceable to go down to 30. It was stated, if I recall, that we could ask the Department of Transportation to reduce it, and that would be fine. So I'm a little confused why it's changed.
So what was shown previously was those areas in green. If you see in your previous packet, there was green, red, and black.
They were in segments.
Yeah, so the green was 30, the red was 35, and then the black was 40. So you could do that, but you would have, I can't remember how many different zones then, just in between Heath and Jeffrey. A lot of signs. And knowing where the driver's on the road or enforcement, there's a lot of, this is just for your consideration. This is what would be enforceable speed limit. If you guys want to adopt a resolution, this is what Public Works would work on signing.
I guess one other comment I would make is around enforcement, and, I would, hope that, Chief Peterson and, in the resources you are given and allocation of enforcement's always on the table. And, it's up to some officer discretion and based on obviously how, resources are allocated and how much time can be allowed for that. But, the question was, will, Forest Lake PD enforce a lower speed limit? I would like to think the answer is going to be yes.
Oh, for sure. There's no doubt about it. And, over the last couple of years, and I was actually going to put this in the next weekly report, is traffic concerns and speed, along with distracted driving, has increased substantially over the last couple of years. We are literally inundated with requests to have officers out at different areas and roadways in Forest Lake, and rightfully so. 100% agree. But that was one of the questions that was brought up earlier by a gentleman, is will we enforce the speed limits if they are changed? And the answer is 100% yes, we will.
So, just one question. Everybody knows where the speed changes now, right, at Greenway. Would we be better to leave the speed change there and turn that other section to 35? To me, that first section there, I don't really see the safety concerns that I do farther down. But I'm just asking, do we want to keep that at a 35 and maybe reduce some of those drivers that, are all of a sudden getting to Heath Avenue and, okay, now I can punch it and go up to where they were? I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. Everybody knows where the speed changes on North Shore Drive right now. They're used to it.
It does bring up a good point, but, this blue, obviously, if it qualified for an urban 30 mile an hour, it would be rightfully so a 35 enforceable speed limit as well.
The visibility on that stretch is not great. You're hitting the curve there, and it is a challenging spot. And so if there's an argument, I think there's so many places where we're limited on being able to reduce the speed, that if we can do it here, I would prefer to take that opportunity, just because, again, there's so many places where we'd like to, but we just can't.
All right. Any other comments?
I don't think we can really improve on what's been proposed here. I really don't.
Well, I think this is a good start, but
Yeah.
I think we really have to try to come up with a long-term solution.
I agree with that, too.
And we gotta acquire right-of-ways. We got,
Right-of-ways is a challenge.
and North Shore is not holding up nearly as well as it should be, and, there's gonna be a lot of repairs coming up on it. I'll look for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve Resolution 09-25-1701, a resolution to designate an urban district and rural residential district on North Shore Trail and establish a 35-mile zone on Heath Avenue North.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries. All right. Dan, 7D, rules of procedure?
Mayor, members of council, what's before you is an amendment to the rules of council procedure, which was approved, I believe, in 2015. Basically what this is, it just outlines the recording of council meetings and workshops. It was taken off the discussion that was had at the September 18th workshop. We're amending page 7 of this policy, of this rules of procedure to state that all scheduled meetings and workshops of the Forest Lake City Council shall be videotaped. In the event, though, that we do have a meeting off-site, as was discussed during the workshop, say in an off-site location or in another room here at the city center, the city administrator does have discretion to see if those meetings are able to be filmed. If they're not, those meetings do not have to be videotaped. It also says that other boards and commissions will also have their meetings and workshops videotaped. According to this policy change, will be the EDA, the Planning Commission, Parks, Lakes, and Trails Commission, and the Forest Lake Airport Commission will also have workshops and their regular meetings videotaped. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding this amendment.
Well, the one thing that I seen was, if they can't be videotaped, that the city council will be informed, but being that there's all these other commissions, wouldn't it be the affected commission would be?
Yeah, the affected commission would be notified as well.
Okay. And, so they'd be videotaped for archive, not necessarily for broadcast, but available for people to access them through
Correct.
our website? Is that kind
Yeah,
of where the discussion was?
In going forward with the videotaping, I did have a conversation with Paul at LATV regarding the live broadcast through our Minitrack, and asked him, in the event that, say, a commission's here that doesn't typically have staff support that has access to IQM2, would they be able to insert the encoder for that commission meeting? He did confirm that that wouldn't be an issue. So moving forward, all the meetings will be broadcast through IQM2, so they will be live streamed out, and then it'll be up to LATV to figure out what they want to program live on their station. But he did say they will be able to insert the encoder. So say a Parks, Lakes, and Trails Commission meeting, which typically the workshops may now not be live streamed on Minitrack, will be moving forward because the person videoing the meeting will start the encoder as part of their videoing process.
Okay. Any?
So one question I hadn't thought of until you just made your comments. Would we want to add that if a meeting or workshop is not going to be recorded, that be noted as part of the public notice? Just so people had an advance notice and weren't surprised by something not being videotaped?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can definitely put that in as how we address meetings, moving forward. I mean, it's up to you guys if you want to memorialize that in this part. I mean, from the staff perspective, I can easily just let whoever's noticing the meeting know this one's not going to be recorded. We're not going to.
Make it part of the posted agenda?
Yeah, just put on the agenda, not going to be videotaped.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's still gonna be meetings where if somebody's absent or it's a different staff person, that recording might not go off as planned, I guess.
Yeah, or just kind of given the history you've had with our IQM2 service, there may be one or two that in the future may not video as well, but I think this kind of just sets it up where it's the intent of the city to videotape all the meetings, get that out there.
And there'll still be like a minutes, a log of those meetings.
Correct, yeah. Everything, that'll all be the same. This basically just sets up that workshops now will be videotaped moving forward and some additional commission meetings as well.
Okay. Well, no more comment. I'd look for a motion on this.
So moved.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Aaron, do you want to take us through the 2018 legislative priorities?
Mayor, members of council, this was previously discussed at the workshop, really just setting the council's legislative platform for 2018, and a lot of things that were previously approved in the 2017 legislative priorities, some of which are reflected in policy positions adopted by the League of Cities, but then a number of other things specific to Forest Lake. Based on the feedback from the workshop, we did have the opportunity to make a couple of amendments that were requested. One was to add an additional bonding request for the $2 million matching contribution to the city's lift station system project as part of our current $4 million rehab. We also added some language in on water resource management that pertain to the streamlining of the administration of watershed district and stormwater management regulations and trying to move toward more consistent regulations from district to district. So that was added as 4B. And I think those were the major changes that were requested. Otherwise, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have with regard to this, or the request is to approve the 2018 legislative priorities.
No questions? All right, I think you did a good job on the outline, Aaron, and I think the things we added are quite relevant. I hope they look at it. I'll look for a motion, or do we need a motion on this? We're just
Your Honor, yeah, I think it'd be
updating it, so-
appropriate to make a motion to approve the 2018 legislative priorities.
All right, I'll look for that motion then.
I'll make a motion. We
yeah.
approve the 2018 legislative priorities as outlined by staff.
Got a motion? Do we have a second on that?
And I'll second it for comment.
All right, we'll open this up for.
I appreciate their attendance at Starbucks, and then also the Run with Ranger Memorial run it's going to be, and that coincides with
Fire Prevention Week.
All right.
Which is October 14th, right, is the big day?
The fire department open house is Saturday, October 14th, and it runs from 10 to 1.
And the Road Ranger's at 9, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, 9 o'clock on October 15th.
A couple other things, just wish everybody well this week. It's homecoming week at the high school, and so definitely those festivities will be happening all week. I'll defer to Councilmember Bain on our visit with Senator Housley and Representative Detmer and the Capitol tour. Big Planning Commission meeting this Wednesday night. There's a number of agenda items, 190th being one of those as well on there. Just a reminder to the council, on October 1st, October 2nd, we do have our goal-setting session at 6 o'clock here. On October 6th, that Friday at 7:15 a.m., we do have an open-to-business kickoff event. So Washington County's taken the lead and contracted with the Metropolitan Consortium for Community Developers to have an open-to-business program through the county. They have two Tuesdays a month that they actually will be here in Forest Lake, available to any business owner to come and visit. So they have a consulting service that they provide. And they also have a revolving loan program that will provide like subordinate or secondary financing on projects. And so they're a great resource. It's worked out well in the counties that have adopted into this. You can learn more about it though at that open to business open house or kickoff open house at 7:15 a.m. I did also want to take a brief opportunity to address the residency question that came up during the open forum. So there are, within state statute, about 14, 15 criteria listed within that. They relate to, in some regards, physical presence, and in other regards, intent. And so there's kind of a variety of different criteria that are established there. So it's a very fact-specific evaluation that needs to be completed to make a determination and judgment on residency. That fact-specific determination ultimately is arbitrated by the council. And so you have a lot of mechanisms that you can go through to make that decision. You can make it based on whatever information you have. You can also, request an investigation, but ultimately, from a process perspective, you are the people that make a judgment and a decision on those types of questions. And so just, that's kind of a next generation question that you're going to probably see out of, that line of inquiry. And so I just wanted to make it clear as people start to have that conversation that is the process. So with that, I'll defer back to you.
All right, Jay, any updates from you?
Mr. Mayor and council members, I've been working with Aaron, and I did prepare a memo on residency, and it's really, I just want to correct one statement that he made. The statute that says whether there's a vacancy someone has to be an inhabitant. And that word is not defined. But then there's, in the election statutes, there's residency. And then we can kind of look at those, and it's kind of the same thing, but that's where they lay out what makes you a resident for election purposes.
Clarify what you mean by someone has to be an inhabitant. So,
I think physical presence, are they there? Are they living there?
okay.
Or do they intend to live there?
And then you're saying the determination is part of the criteria to run for office, is where you would find the other determinations of how you define residency. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it might be helpful for Aaron to give you a copy of my legal memo.
Could you forward that to staff or council?
But I mean, the statute on vacancy just says, there is a vacancy if you're not an inhabitant. And then they don't define what that means. And so then we go and look at, if you want to get elected here, here's what you need to, be to be a resident, so.
Okay. Thank you.
But I mean, it is your job to determine whether there's a vacancy or not, and whatever process you want to follow.
Ryan?
I don't have any additional updates unless there's any specific questions.
The speed limit change, when would that start taking effect?
You already just ordered the signs off. So I'll supply Public Works with a map. We'll try to, I know one spot we can salvage the sign potentially already. So we'd have to order signs. Probably want to do that with a larger bundle of signs so we get a cost-effective deal on some other sign replacements they might be doing. And then have it installed, so.
Would we, or I guess question would be is, would it make sense to put up a notice at Goodview right now that, and at, the other end, that speeds will be changing?
Yeah, we could put that up. There is a sign, I can't think of what it says, but when
Or
changes.
just one of them.
Flashing signs?
Flashing light signs or something?
I don't think they have a variable message board sign. It would be more of a traffic control change ahead kind of a sign. So it'll be a black on orange construction warning sign that you could put out.
Okay, something to alert people that, there is gonna be a change. I think,
And maybe first month or so, it's kind of the educational thing.
Yep, we can definitely do that. And I'm sure between the Forest Lake Police Department Facebook page, the City of Forest Lake Facebook page, and then also the website, we can have that posted on there as well.
Okay.
Public notification and kind of some campaign around it, I think, is important. People need to know before the law just changes overnight.
Sure.
all right, thank you. Sam?
Yeah, I attended 2 meetings since the last meeting. I attended the FLAW meeting the other night, and they go through a lot of stuff before they get to the real meat of the thing, and all these different boards and things, and I know they're concerned about the ball fields out there, and I think they're gonna be able to come up with a solution. The baseball people were there, and so they were working on some things there. Well, I guess we'll have to see about that. And then I also attended the school board meeting and, excuse me, last week, and they're kind of gearing up for the referendum that's going to be coming up here on November 7th, where the voters will get a chance to decide on that. And otherwise, it's basically paying the bills and that sort of thing. So that's the only 2 things I have for you tonight.
All right, Ed?
No update.
All right. So yeah, I've had the opportunity to meet with a couple, 3 different businesses around town that had some concerns. For the most part, they give the city of Forest Lake some very positive input. Unfortunately, they're running up to issues with the watershed all the time. trying to expand parking lots, do different things, and there's no flexibility, there's no common sense sometimes in some of those regulations. I think we need to try to work with the watershed district a lot better to, get an understanding, both of our watersheds, to get an understanding of, the needs of our city versus the regulations, and I think there's better ways to do some of that management than micromanaging some of these very small areas that just get extraordinarily cost prohibitive to move ahead on, so that should be a joint meeting coming up here as our goal setting. I think that's going to be one of the big goal setting things to do that.
Sorry to interrupt you, but do we have an opportunity to do some sort of a joint workshop with the watershed districts? Or it'd be interesting to see what that agenda might look like and if they would be open to doing some sort of a joint discussion.
Well, and part of that is our surface water management plan, and, the items that we put in there get incorporated into those watershed goals. So, we need to look at that a lot closer and, kind of try and set some goals to get that. Becoming our own authority might be another issue that we look at. We have the opportunity for a couple other areas to grow that are going to be quite restricted by the watershed, but and we'll deal those one step at a time anyway. The open to business that Aaron mentioned, great thing that's coming up. I'm looking forward to that. I think that presents some good tools for the businesses that are here and individuals, as well as to be able to bring new businesses to town. I missed, unfortunately, the Capitol tour due to my holidays, so that I had to step down on, but I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit more about that. And seniors had their meeting, nothing new there, everything's going well. So I think that's it for me.
Yeah, I know you kind of mentioned it at a high level, but I thought we had a good meeting with Team Vantage last week.
Yeah, I didn't want to mention the name, but yeah, it was a very good meeting with Team Vantage.
Seems like they're growing, and they're up to, what was it, almost 300 employees or something like that? Or?
Real close to that, and they've got potential for quite a bit of expansion. Hopefully we can keep that in Forest Lake, but part of that is also dealing with the watershed. So, but they were talking potential of another 50,000 square feet. It'd be nice to have here anyway, but we'll see. So, go ahead.
Aaron mentioned last Thursday had an opportunity to meet at the invitation of Senator Housley, who also invited Representative Detmer to join us on a tour of the Capitol. And I'd like to commend staff for taking what was potentially a little more of a social visit into an opportunity to sit down and have a tough discussion, or the starts of a really good discussion on Highway 97 bonding plan. So they had a full package prepared and a kind of a request and an opportunity to kind of walk them through what a project might look like for a bonding request, essentially to take us from Goodview to Manning with some significant state projects. So I think having that audience and taking advantage of that opportunity was, again, just really hard work on staff to put all that together in a quick point, but we were kind of well positioned to take advantage of that opportunity. So nice job, and it's kicked off a great conversation. There's a lot of work to be done there. State bonding requests of a municipality don't just happen easily or overnight, so there's a lot of work to be done, but I think it was a good start. So thank you. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I thought you were done.
So, and just address one of the items that came up tonight during open forum. I heard your criticism on that the concerns around residency were brought up when Councilmember Freer wasn't here. But I'd like to defend the resident and to say there's not a good time for those types of questions to come up. And if there are concerns around significant legal where somebody lives, that if somebody on this council, again, there isn't you don't wait on that. You don't wait for the right audience. You don't wait for the right opportunity. Those facts need to come out and those questions need to be asked. And I think we as council need to decide how do we respond to that. We started with a soft ask of working with city attorney, and I'm concerned that that just hasn't gotten us very far. and no jab intended over to our city attorney. I just think that that path is not going to lead to a resolution. I think we were presented tonight with some facts that we have to investigate, and I would encourage us to take that action to find the facts and act accordingly. It is our responsibility, as Aaron has pointed out.
Well, I thought the question was addressed and taken care of, but, the Times had a story on it as well. As far as I'm concerned, it was taken care of, but we'll go down that path later, I guess, so. All right, having nothing on the agenda, I look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.